"If anyone asks," he whispered, "say I was never here." The words clung to the air long after he'd gone, warm breath cooling into silence. Rose Carter stood by the half-drawn curtain, the candle shaking in her hand, watching Lord Arthur Vale vanish down the servants' corridor. The latch clicked. The house exhaled. Outside, November rain slicked the window panes, tapping like restless fingers. Inside, only the grandfather clock dared to speak, its pendulum marking out the sin she'd just committed. Rose pressed the small silver key into her palm until it hurt. It had hung earlier that evening from a velvet ribbon at Lady Margaret Vale's waist, symbol of rank, propriety, and power. Now it sat in the maid's pocket, warm from the Lord's hand and heavy with meaning. She told herself it was love, that he saw her, truly saw her, beyond starch and service. But love did not ask to be hidden behind closed doors or buried beneath lavender sheets that smelled of another woman. Love did not end with, "If anyone asks, say I was never here." A gust shuddered through the corridor, dimming the candle. She straightened her cap, smoothed her apron, and began the walk back to the mistress's chambers. The hall of portraits watched her pass, generations of Vales staring down in painted judgment. Their eyes glimmered in the candlelight, and she thought, absurdly, that they knew. She hurried on. At the landing, she paused. From below came the faint metallic clatter of the scullery clock being wound, then a voice, muffled but distinct. "Rose?" Her heart froze. It was Mrs. Pettigrew, the housekeeper, sharp-eared, sleepless, and cruelly fond of rules. Rose snuffed the candle and pressed herself into the shadow of the banister. The housekeeper's lantern glow swept the stairwell, lingered on the carpet, then moved away. "Servants wandering after hours," Pettigrew muttered. "Lord save us from idle hands." The door to the butler's pantry shut with a thud. Only when the sound faded did Rose breathe again. She reached the mistress's dressing room and slipped inside. The air smelled of violets and cold iron. Jewels glimmered faintly within their velvet trays. Rings, brooches, the famed sapphire necklace that Lady Margaret wore only at Christmas. Rose crossed to the mirrored vanity. Her own reflection looked foreign. Eyes wide, hair escaping its pins, mouth bruised from a kiss she could still taste. She set the candle down and touched the silver key against the lock of the jewel case. It fit perfectly. For a moment she considered placing it back, closing the lid, ending the danger. But curiosity, fatal, feminine, forbidden, urged her on. Inside the case lay not only jewels, but a small envelope sealed in red wax, marked with the lady's crest. Across its front, in an elegant, decisive hand, were 3 words: "To be delivered only." Rose hesitated. Deliver to whom? Her thumb traced the seal, feeling the indent of the signet. She did not break it, only slipped the envelope beneath the tray, meaning to forget it was there. A floorboard creaked behind her. She spun. "Still awake?" Arthur stood in the doorway, shirt collar open, rain darkening his hair. He smiled the smile that had ruined her. "You shouldn't be here," she whispered. "If we're seen, then let them see." He stepped inside, closing the door. "I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking of you, walking these halls alone. Your wife is asleep," he said, though the way he said it made her doubt. He brushed his fingers over the key still in her grasp. "You found it. I meant to return it. Keep it," he said. "You may need it sooner than you think." Rose drew back. "Arthur, what's happening?" He sighed, turning toward the window. "Margaret's solicitor arrived this afternoon. She's drafting a new will, without me. She means to leave Harrowgate Vale to her brother's child. That can't be true. He faced her, eyes fever-bright. She'll ruin me. Everything, this estate, the staff, your position, goes if she signs. My position? She repeated, almost laughing. I'm a maid, Arthur. I've nothing to lose but shame. He crossed to her, lowering his voice. Then share mine. Before she could protest, he kissed her, hard, desperate, pleading. When he pulled away, he held her gaze. I won't let her take what's mine. Tomorrow, I'll find the will and see that it never reaches London. Rose shook her head. No, please. You'll damn us both. He touched her cheek. Only if we're caught. From the corridor came a faint scrape, the unmistakable whisper of silk on stone. Lady Margaret's voice followed, cold and clear. Arthur! He froze. Rose's fingers found the key again, clenching it like a prayer. The door handle turned. Arthur blew out the candle. The room fell into moonlight. Arthur? The lady called softly, stepping inside. Why are you awake? He feigned a yawn. Couldn't sleep. Too much rain. Her gaze swept the shadows. I thought I heard voices. Only the wind. Margaret's eyes rested on the open jewel case. Strange. My key's missing. Rose's pulse roared in her ears. Arthur's tone stayed smooth. Perhaps Pettigrew mislaid it while polishing. Margaret smiled thinly. Pettigrew never mislays anything. She moved closer to the vanity. And yet, her hand touched the still warm lid. Someone has been here. Arthur took her arm lightly. Come back to bed. You're tired. I'll come, she said, after I check the east wing. It smells of smoke. Her eyes lifted to his. You wouldn't know why, would you? No, he said. She studied him a moment longer, then turned for the door. At the threshold, she paused. Oh, and tell the maid who wears my perfume that imitation doesn't flatter her. The door closed behind her with surgical quiet. Arthur exhaled shakily. She knows. She always knew, Rose whispered from the darkness. He turned toward her, silhouette haloed by the dying firelight. Then we're past pretending. What will you do? What we must. He reached for the key in her hand. You and I will find that will before dawn. Rose hesitated. If we're caught. He smiled, the smile that had always undone her. If anyone asks, he said softly, we were never here. The rain intensified, drumming against the window like a clock run wild. In the hall, the portraits of the dead Vales seemed to lean closer, listening. The corridors of Harrowgate Vale never slept. They merely listened. Every clock ticked a little too loud. Every gust through the chimney sounded like a name whispered through confession. Rose followed Arthur down the servants' stair, her candle shielded by trembling fingers. He moved ahead of her with the precision of a man who had rehearsed his own downfall. Somewhere deep in the walls, the old pipes groaned, echoing the thunder outside. Where are we going? She asked in a hush. To the study, he said. That's where she keeps her papers. Pettigrew locks the safe at night, but I have another key. He did not look back when he said it, which told Rose he was lying. They passed the portrait gallery, faces of ancestors who had bought their titles in blood and sugar. The eyes seemed to follow them, as though aware that one more sin was about to join the family ledger. At the bottom of the staircase, Arthur paused by a heavy oak door. Wait here, he murmured, and slipped inside. Rose waited, half a minute, maybe more, before the silence grew unbearable. She pushed the door open a crack. The study smelled of ink, old cigars, and damp parchment. Arthur stood at the desk, rifling through drawers, a single candle throwing long, frantic shadows across the bookshelves. Nothing. he muttered. Damn her. Arthur, stop. Her voice trembled. If she wakes. He looked up sharply. You think she'll spare me if she does? She'll have me ruined. Debts exposed, accounts seized, everything gone. And me? Rose asked softly. That stopped him. He stared at her for a long moment, then said, quieter. You'll come with me. Once I have enough to leave this place, Rose almost smiled, until he added, there's money in the estate box. If we find the will, we can replace it with one I sign. No one will question it. Her stomach turned cold. That's forgery. It's survival, he said. Before she could answer, a sound reached them, the creak of a floorboard just outside the study. Arthur blew out the candle. Darkness swallowed them whole. The door eased open. A cone of lantern light slid across the carpet. Who's there? Came Pettigrew's rasping voice. Rose's pulse hammered. She felt Arthur's hand grip hers. The housekeeper stepped inside, lantern raised. I saw light, she said to the empty air. If it's rats again, I'll have the cat down here before dawn. The flame in her lantern flared as she bent over the hearth. The light brushed Arthur's sleeve. Rose acted before she could think. She coughed, loud and sudden. Pettigrew startled. Who? Rose stepped into the light. Only me, Mrs. Pettigrew. My candle went out. I came for more matches. The old woman squinted. At this hour? I couldn't sleep. The nursery fire was low. Pettigrew's gaze swept the room. And his lordship? Arthur spoke from the shadow by the curtains, voice heavy with pretense. Here, Pettigrew. I was just checking the window latch. Draught keeps the study freezing. Her eyes narrowed. Indeed. She sniffed the air, then said, Smells of lavender in here. Odd scent for a study. Rose felt heat rise to her cheeks. Arthur smiled tightly. My wife insists on sachets everywhere. Drives me mad. Pettigrew muttered something about wasteful women and left, the lantern light retreating like a blessing withdrawn. When the door closed, Arthur exhaled. Quick thinking. I lied for you, Rose whispered. He touched her cheek. You're very good at it. She stepped back. Don't. He froze, then sighed. Forgive me. I forget sometimes how much you risk. Rose looked toward the desk. You said the will was here. What if it isn't? He hesitated, then opened a hidden compartment beneath the writing surface. Inside lay a sealed envelope stamped with Lady Margaret's crest. She hides it well, he said, but not well enough. He broke the seal. The wax snapped like bone. Rose flinched. Arthur, please. He unfolded the document, eyes scanning the lines. To my brother's son, Henry Vale, I leave the estate and all attached revenues. To my husband, a yearly allowance of... His voice caught. £2,000. 2,000? For a man who built this place. You built nothing, Rose said, before she could stop herself. He turned sharply. What did you say? She bit her lip. I meant, you kept it alive. That must count. His anger softened, but only slightly. She would see me begging, Rose. Me, her husband. You still have me, she said quietly. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment she thought she saw love instead of strategy. Then he reached for the poker by the hearth and fed the will to the fire. No. Rose darted forward, but the paper had already caught flame, curling, blackening, words turning to ash. It's done, he said. Now no one will know. You've destroyed her will. I've saved us both. The flames roared higher. Smoke curled along the ceiling, a serpent twisting through gilt frames. A loud crack split the quiet, the door swinging open. Lady Margaret stood there, pale as moonlight, her hair unbound, eyes wide with fury and something far worse, understanding. "Arthur," she said, voice trembling, "what have you done?" The poker slipped from his hand, striking the hearth with a dull clang. "Nothing that concerns you," he said, too calmly. "I saw the smoke from my window." Her gaze flicked to Rose. "And you? Of course you're here." Rose bowed her head. "My lady." Silence. Margaret's hand shook as she pointed toward the fireplace. "That was my will." Arthur spread his hands. "Your will would have made me a beggar in my own house." "You've made yourself worse," she said. "A thief." He laughed softly. "Thieves take what isn't theirs." "You would have taken mine." Margaret turned to Rose. "And you? How long have you been his accomplice?" Rose opened her mouth, but no sound came. Margaret's expression hardened. "I trusted you. I called you decent. She is decent," Arthur said. "I made her do nothing." "You made her?" "You've made her ruined." Margaret's voice cracked. "Do you think I don't see the truth on her face?" Rose felt the ground tilt beneath her. Margaret's gaze burned. "Out. Both of you. Before sunrise, you'll be gone from this house." Arthur took a step forward. "You'll regret this." She smiled without warmth. "Not as much as you will." She turned and left, leaving the scent of violets and smoke behind her. For a long time, neither spoke. The will had vanished into ash, the marriage into ruin, and whatever Rose had believed about love hung in the air like soot. Finally, she whispered, "What will you do now?" Arthur looked toward the window. "What I must. She won't let us go quietly." He reached for her hand. "If she means to ruin me, I'll give her reason." "Arthur." He pressed the still warm key back into her palm. "Keep this. Tonight, you'll need it more than she ever did." Outside, lightning split the sky, illuminating the long drive and the yew trees bowing in the wind. Thunder followed, deep and final. And in that instant, Rose understood that love at Harrowgate Vale was not a blessing, but a weapon, one that cut both ways. The thunder did not stop when Lady Margaret left. It only learned to speak her name. Each rumble felt like a verdict rolling through the stones of Harrowgate Vale. Rose stood by the hearth, staring at the ashes of the will until her reflection in the brass poker blurred into smoke. Arthur poured himself another glass of brandy. The liquid trembled as he lifted it. "She means to call the magistrate," he said. "By morning, I'll be ruined." Rose whispered. "Then beg her forgiveness." He gave a low, humorless laugh. "Forgiveness is for servants and priests." He drained the glass and set it down. "If she summons the law, she'll drag you with her." "You think she'll tell them I acted alone?" "She wouldn't." "Wouldn't she? A wronged wife? She'll enjoy it. A maid disgraced, a husband destroyed. What finer story for the papers?" Rose's throat tightened. "Then what choice do we have?" Arthur looked toward the rain-lashed window. "We run." Her breath caught. "Run. From the law? From her? From all of it. There's cash in the lockbox, enough to start again in France. I'll send for you once the coast is clear." She shook her head. "You'd never come." He stepped closer. "You think me a coward? I think you love yourself more than anyone," she said quietly. For a heartbeat, his eyes darkened. Then he smiled, cold, admiring. "Perhaps that's why I've survived this long." He brushed past her toward the safe hidden behind a portrait. "Hold the light." Rose hesitated, then lifted the candle. The frame swung open, revealing the small iron door. Arthur turned the dial with steady hands. Click, click. The sound of fortune deciding whether to grant mercy. Outside, the storm howled through the chimneys. The curtains billowed like ghosts. Finally, the safe opened. Inside lay a stack of ledgers, a pistol wrapped in cloth, and a bundle of banknotes bound with ribbon. Arthur snatched the money and the pistol both. "Arthur," she breathed, "what are you doing?" "Protection," he said. "Margaret won't give up easily." He started toward the door, but stopped. Footsteps echoed on the marble floor beyond, not hurried, measured. "She's coming back," Rose hissed. Arthur looked around desperately. "The window. The drop is 20 feet. Then pray for soft mud." Before he could move, the door swung open once more. Lady Margaret stood framed in the lightning, a letter clutched in her hand. Her hair was damp, her face pale but resolute. "I thought you might try this," she said. "So I brought witnesses." Behind her, 2 figures appeared, Mrs. Pettigrew and the butler, solemn, frightened. Arthur froze. "Margaret." She raised the letter. "This is a statement for my solicitor. I've written every word of your theft and your affair. Pettigrew will deliver it at dawn." Pettigrew nodded grimly. Arthur's voice sharpened. "You'd destroy your own name for spite?" "For truth," she said. "Harrowgate Vale deserves honesty, even if it costs me everything." He took a step toward her. "Give me the letter." "No." "Margaret." Her eyes shone. "You've already taken enough from me. You'll take nothing more." The pistol rose before Rose even saw him draw it. "Arthur, no!" she cried. A flash of lightning split the room. The shot followed, a deafening crack swallowed by thunder. Smoke filled the air. Pettigrew screamed. The butler staggered backward, lantern crashing to the floor. Margaret stood motionless, eyes wide. The letter slipped from her hand. For a terrible second, Rose thought she was falling, then realized the pistol had misfired. The bullet had lodged in the ceiling beam. Margaret's voice came ragged. "You'd kill me for my money." Arthur lowered the pistol, face ashen. I meant only to frighten—" Pettigrew spat. "You'll hang for this." Arthur turned, panic replacing fury. He seized Rose by the wrist. "Come." "Arthur, let her." "Now." He dragged her through the servants' door into the passage. Behind them, the house erupted in shouts. The butler's lantern set the curtain alight. Flames leapt hungrily toward the ceiling. They ran. The storm swallowed them, wind tearing at their clothes. The courtyard was a sheet of mud and lightning. Rose stumbled. "Stop! Where will we go?" Arthur pulled her toward the stables. "The carriage road, if we can reach it." A flash of light illuminated his face, wild, desperate, streaked with soot. "Arthur, please, we can't—" He turned on her, shaking. "Do you want to hang beside me?" "She'll swear you helped. I didn't." "Then run." He let go and sprinted across the yard. The rain came sideways now, blinding. Rose hesitated only a moment before following. Her skirts clung to her legs, heavy with water. Behind her, the manor windows glowed orange. Fire licked the night. She reached the stables to find Arthur struggling with the carriage door. The horse shied and reared, terrified by thunder. "Arthur!" she cried. "It's madness." He looked at her, eyes fevered. "Everything's gone, Rose. We either flee or die in chains." A new sound cut through the storm, the clang of the chapel bell, not summoned by clergy, but by servants roused in terror. The entire house was awake. Arthur climbed onto the driver's seat, whip in hand. "Get in." She stood motionless in the rain. "Not like this." He stared down at her. "I did all this for us." "You did it for yourself." He cursed and snapped the reins. The horse lurched forward. Mud splashed her hem as the carriage jolted toward the gate. Rose ran after it, shouting his name, but the wind stole her voice. The wheels struck a rut. The carriage skidded, tilted, then crashed against the stone fountain. A scream, wood splintering, then silence, but for the storm. Rose fell to her knees, the rain mixing with tears. She crawled toward the wreckage. The horse lay thrashing. The carriage lay on its side. "Arthur!" He hung half outside the door, blood bright against the grey rain. His eyes flickered open. "Rose!" "Don't speak." She tried to pull him free, but the door was jammed. He caught her wrist weakly. "The key." "What?" "The silver key. Keep it. Don't let her." His grip loosened. The thunder rolled once more, lower now, like the closing of a door. When the servants found her minutes later, she was still clutching his hand. Mrs. Pettigrew crossed herself. "Lord forgive him." The butler whispered, "He's gone." Rose could only stare at the key shining in her palm, the one he had pressed there hours earlier, the key that had unlocked every door but salvation. Behind them, the manor burned, flames curling through the east wing windows. Lady Margaret, soot-streaked but alive, stood at the threshold watching it burn. Her eyes met Rose's across the courtyard. Neither spoke. The rain hissed on the fire, steam rising like ghosts between them. Somewhere within that sound, Rose heard the echo of the first words he'd ever said to her. "If anyone asks, say I was never here." But now everyone in Harrowgate Vale would know he had been. Dawn came grey and wet, washing the colour from everything it touched. Smoke still rose from the east wing, mingling with the morning mist. What remained of Harrowgate Vale looked less like a house and more like a confession written in ash. Rose sat at the servants' table, a blanket around her shoulders, hands raw from cold. Across from her, Mrs. Pettigrew poured tea that tasted of soot. No one spoke. Even the clock seemed reluctant to move. At last the door opened and Constable Hewitt entered, boots leaving black prints on the tile. "Miss Rose Carter," he said, "you'll come with me if you please." She stood without protest. The constable's tone was not cruel, only tired, as though he'd uttered the same sentence to too many ruined souls. Lady Margaret waited in the morning room, her arm bandaged, her face a mask of composure held together by will. When Rose entered, Margaret dismissed the others with a nod. "Sit," she said. Rose obeyed. For a long time the lady studied her, not the way mistresses studied servants, but the way surgeons studied wounds. "You tried to help him escape," Margaret said at last. "I tried to stop him." "You failed." Rose's fingers tightened around the blanket. "He loved you once." "That was his first lie," Margaret said softly. "The second was loving you." Silence stretched. The rain outside had dwindled to a steady drip from the gutters. Finally, Margaret reached into her sleeve and withdrew a folded paper, edges singed but words intact. "This is what I saved from the fire." "My will, or what's left of it." Rose stared at it. "Why show me?" "Because you were there," Margaret said, "and because I must decide whether to damn you with him or forgive you." "I'll accept whatever you choose." Margaret gave a small, brittle smile. "That's the first honest thing you've said." She laid the paper on the table. "He forged this once already." "I should have expected it. He could never bear being second to anyone, not even to me." She looked up sharply. "Tell me the truth, Rose. Did he plan it?" "The fire, the letter, all of it?" Rose hesitated. "He wanted to leave. To run away. With you." Rose swallowed. "Yes." "And you would have gone?" I thought love could make him good." Margaret's gaze softened by a fraction. "It never does. It only teaches clever men how to wound more beautifully." She leaned back, weary. The constable will ask questions. I could name you an accomplice. They'd believe me. Rose nodded. I know. Margaret tapped the paper once. Or I could tell them what I saw. A frightened girl trying to save a man already damned. Tears pricked Rose's eyes. Why would you spare me? Because he took enough from both of us. She folded the will and slid it into a drawer. You'll pack your things. When the coroner is finished, you'll leave this house. There'll be a reference waiting, modest but respectable. No one need know, Rose whispered. Thank you, my lady. Margaret's lips curved faintly. Don't thank me. I'm not kind. I'm merely tired. 2 days later, the inquest met in the chapel. Arthur's body lay in a simple coffin, rain tapping the lid like polite applause. The magistrate read the findings. Death by misadventure, following attempted flight during a domestic fire. No charges would follow. The house would remain under Lady Margaret's care. When the service ended, Rose lingered by the yew tree where the smoke still clung to the bark. In her pocket, the silver key pressed against her palm, as if reminding her that nothing ever truly vanished. Not guilt, not memory. Miss Carter. She turned. Mr. Fitzgerald, the solicitor, stood behind her, umbrella tilted against the drizzle. I was asked to deliver this. He held out a sealed envelope. The wax bore the Vale crest. From the lady? He hesitated. From the late lord. It was among his personal effects. Rose stared at the seal, the same colour as the blood that had stained her hands. She broke it open. Inside was a single sheet in Arthur's hurried scrawl. If the worst should come, keep the key. What it opens is proof that she lied. Beneath the chapel floor, east corner stone. For us both. A. Her breath caught. Beneath the chapel floor. Fitzgerald studied her expression. Is it important? No, she lied. Only a debt he owed. He nodded politely and walked away. Rose stood alone in the rain, the letter trembling between her fingers. Proof that she lied. Proof of what? Of Lady Margaret's deceit? Of Arthur's innocence? Or another manipulation from a man who could not tell the truth, even in death? The chapel door stood ajar, smoke-stained but still intact. She looked around. The courtyard was empty. Heart hammering, she slipped inside. The air smelled of damp stone and extinguished candles. Sunlight filtered through the cracked window, turning the dust into falling ash. She crossed to the east corner and knelt. The flagstone there was slightly raised, its mortar loosened by years of cold. With trembling hands, she pried it up. Beneath lay a small iron box no larger than a Bible. The lock was simple. The silver key fit perfectly. Inside were 2 things: a bundle of letters tied with blue ribbon, and a second will, older, yellowed, signed by Lady Margaret Vale. Rose unfolded the first page. The ink had bled from damp, but one line was clear. I leave the sum of £10,000 to my husband, Lord Arthur Vale, to be held in trust for his heir, the child of my maid, Rose Carter. The room tilted. Her breath came shallow. She read it again, fingers trembling. His heir, the child of my maid. There was no child. There had never been one. Not yet. Margaret had written this before she knew, before suspicion became fact. The sound of footsteps echoed from the doorway. Rose spun, clutching the paper. Lady Margaret stood there, pale in the dim light. So he told you where to look. Rose stammered. You knew? Margaret nodded. I buried it there myself. I wondered whether he'd confess before he died. Apparently not. Then, it's true? Margaret stepped closer. It was a draft. Never signed by witnesses. He convinced me there was nothing between you, until the night I saw your perfume on his shirt. Tears blurred Rose's vision. He said you lied. I did, Margaret said. But not about that. She knelt beside the box. He thought this paper would save him. It only damned us all, Rose whispered. Why leave it here? Because someday someone would come looking, and I wanted them to know how lies breed. She closed the box gently. Take it. Burn it. Or keep it if you need to remember what he was. Rose shook her head. No, it's your secret. Margaret looked at her, really looked, and something softer passed between them, born not of forgiveness, but of exhaustion shared. Go, the lady said, before I change my mind about Mercy. Rose rose unsteadily. Where will you go? I have a house in Bath. Too many memories here. She managed a thin smile. And you? I don't know. Then perhaps we're even. Margaret turned away, and the light from the doorway outlined her like a ghost about to dissolve. Whatever he wrote about you, she said, remember that he never truly saw you. But I did. Then she was gone. Rose stood for a long while in the empty chapel, the key and the draft will in her hands. Outside, the rain had stopped. The first pale sun of morning touched the ashes on the windowsill and turned them to silver dust. 15 years passed before anyone spoke the name Harrowgate Vale aloud again. Time had done what fire could not, buried the house in ivy and rumour. Lady Margaret died quietly in Bath, her estate divided among distant cousins. The servants scattered. The story of the Lord's fall became something whispered by laundresses and forgotten by gentry. And Rose Carter, once the maid at the heart of the scandal, became Mrs. Rose Whitby, housekeeper to a modest rectory in Yorkshire. No one there knew her history. No one asked about the thin scar across her palm, where a key had once bitten deep. She kept to her duties, tended the garden, and raised a daughter with solemn eyes and copper hair named Eliza, a name chosen for no reason she could explain, except that it sounded like forgiveness. The years slipped quietly by. But every November, when the wind turned cold and the bells tolled for All Souls, Rose would wake before dawn and dream of rain striking windows, of a voice whispering, "If anyone asks, say I was never here." The letter arrived on such a morning, postmarked from London, written in an unfamiliar but elegant hand. To Mrs. Whitby, formerly Rose Carter. It has come to our attention that you may hold in your possession documents relating to the late estate of Harrowgate Vale. A new claim has been made upon the property, and your testimony may be required. Please present yourself at Fitzgerald and Crane, solicitors, no later than the 14th of November, 1913. Harrison Fitzgerald. The name struck her like an echo from another life. For a long time she sat staring at the paper, the key, tarnished now, resting beside her teacup. Eliza found her there. "Mama? Is something wrong?" Rose smiled faintly. "Just ghosts, my dear." They're never content to stay buried. London had changed. The city no longer smelled of horse and coal, but of smoke and progress. Rose arrived at the solicitor's office dressed in plain grey, the key tucked safely in her reticule. Mr. Fitzgerald, older, softer around the eyes, rose to greet her. "Mrs. Whitby, I wondered if you'd come. You wrote of a claim," she said. "Who could still want Harrowgate Vale?" He gestured toward the adjoining room. "Someone who has more right than most." When the door opened, a young woman entered, tall, poised, unmistakably familiar. Her eyes were the blue of autumn skies over old stone. Rose's breath caught. "Eliza," the girl frowned. "I beg your pardon?" Mr. Fitzgerald smiled. "This is Miss Eliza Vale, ward of the late Lady Margaret. She's here to confirm an inheritance." Rose's knees nearly gave way. "Vale?" "Yes," the girl said politely. "I was told my mother died when I was an infant." Lady Margaret raised me as her niece Rose turned to Fitzgerald, heart hammering. Her niece? He nodded. The lady left a sealed letter to be opened upon Miss Vale's 21st birthday. It names her the rightful heir to Harrowgate Vale. He studied Rose closely. You, Mrs. Whitby, are mentioned as witness. Rose whispered. Witness to what? Fitzgerald unfolded a yellowed envelope, the same draft will she had once found beneath the chapel floor. Lady Margaret wished the girl to know the truth, he said gently, that her father was Lord Arthur Vale, and that her mother was not a noblewoman, but a servant who saved them both. Eliza's eyes widened. A servant? What do you mean? Rose's lips trembled. He had another life. Another woman. Fitzgerald laid a second letter on the desk. The seal was black, the handwriting unmistakably Margaret's. To the child who carries both our sins and our hope. Your father loved a woman he should not have loved. I loved a man I should have left. Between us, we built a house of fire and lies. You were the only truth that survived it. She saved you, though the world will never know her name. When you read this, find her, and let neither of us be remembered by hate. Monsieur Vale. Eliza looked from the letter to Rose, confusion softening into wonder. You knew her. The servant. Rose swallowed hard. Yes, she said. Better than anyone. Fitzgerald cleared his throat gently. Miss Vale, Lady Margaret's final instruction was that the estate be restored and opened as a charitable refuge for women in service, fallen or forgotten. She wished Mrs. Whitby to oversee it. Eliza turned to her. Would you? Rose could not speak for a moment. At last, she nodded. If you'll have me. They travelled north together a month later. The journey was long and silent, but not unkind. When the carriage finally crested the last hill, Harrowgate Vale rose from the mist like a scar that refused to fade. The east wing was rebuilt in pale stone. Ivy had crept over the rest. Birds nested where chandeliers once hung. Inside, the grand staircase stood blackened at the edges, the portraits smoke-darkened, but still watching. Eliza walked ahead, fingertips trailing along the banister. It's beautiful, she whispered. Rose smiled sadly. It was once. They found the chapel still standing, the yew tree outside grown thick and twisted. Rose knelt by the old stone step and set the silver key on the ground. Eliza joined her. Is that? The key to everything I should have left locked, Rose said. But some doors have to open before they can close. She pressed the key into the earth. Let it rest. They stood together as the wind moved through the branches, scattering dry leaves like ashes returned to sky. Eliza looked at her then. You speak as though you were here before. Rose met her eyes. I was. The girl's breath caught. You? Rose nodded slowly. I was the servant in your mother's letter. Silence stretched between them, broken only by the rustle of the yew. Eliza's eyes filled with tears, but there was no accusation in them, only quiet recognition. Then you're my mother. Rose reached out, fingertips brushing the girl's cheek. If you'll have me so. Eliza took her hand and pressed it to her heart. I think I always did. That evening, as dusk settled over the moor, the lamps in Harrowgate Vale were lit again for the first time in 15 years. Light spilled from every window, soft and gold, touching even the scorched walls with warmth. From the hill above, the house no longer looked haunted, but alive, like a sinner who had finally learned to pray. Inside the chapel, a single candle burned beside a framed inscription newly carved into the stone. To the women who kept their secrets and still survived. Rose stood beside her daughter, watching the flame tremble. She once told me, Rose said quietly, that clever men wound beautifully, but perhaps clever women learn to heal? Eliza smiled through tears. Will you stay here with me? For a while, Rose said, long enough to teach you what truth costs and why it's still worth paying. Outside, the wind stirred the yew branches, carrying the faint scent of violets across the courtyard. Somewhere within that sound, a voice seemed to whisper from memory. If anyone asks, say I was never here. Rose smiled, closing her eyes. No, Arthur, she murmured. You were here. And so was I. And that, at last, is enough. The candlelight flickered against the stained glass, throwing patterns of gold across the floor. And for the first time since that night of storm and fire, Harrowgate Vale was at peace.